Welcome back to Math Teacher Institute. Today we're going to talk about that dreaded day when you're grading those tests and all of your students seem to be failing. Come on in.
I'm Monhard Dalal, and this is Math Teacher Institute. I've been a math teacher for over a decade, both in America and abroad, and I have a master's degree from the Math for Teaching program at Harvard. At Math Teacher Institute, we're going to talk about all the ways we can make our math teaching more effective.
Today we're going to talk about what are the factors that can lead to our students failing, what do we do next, and then how do we implement a plan moving forward. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to examine why did our students fail. And that can come down to generally one of three factors: student factors, teacher factors, and external factors. First of all, we have student factors. Now, student factors could include a lot of things, but specifically, we want to look for things like, did the students lack background knowledge? Was there some prior knowledge that they were supposed to have that for whatever reason ended up holding them back and preventing them from doing well on this test, even though maybe we presented all the information in the right way? Another factor that can affect this is, did the students understand and respect the level of difficulty of this topic? So you may have had a topic that in hindsight is quite a bit more challenging than some of the topics you've done previously in your class. Students may not have known or not really cared to know that they needed to put in more effort for this topic than they have some of the ones in the past. Next, let's talk about some potential teacher factors that could lead to this happening. First of all, did we maybe go a little too fast? Is it possible that with all the rush of the school year and all of our deadlines that we pushed a little too hard, didn't spend quite enough time with our students to make sure that they had developed the skills fully before we tested them? The next factor kind of ties in with one of our student factors, which is, as teachers, did we identify weaknesses in background knowledge either before or during the lesson that could have contributed to their struggles? If we are teaching a lesson and we notice that our students are really struggling with this and this is something they should know already, but unfortunately maybe they don't, we have to be flexible and ready to mold our lesson to fit what our students need, right? Which might include some sudden remediation that we weren't planning on doing. And one thing we can do that can really help with that is to make sure we're always trying to connect our current lesson to some prior knowledge. So whether the remediation is necessary or not, making those connections, helping our students to make those connections, that all of math is connected and that what they learned last week or last month or last year has a direct connection to what they're doing now, will help our students to see math as an overall picture rather than a collection of isolated types of problems that they solve without that wider view, which is so important in math. So now we come to the third kind of factor, which is probably the most common factor and most likely to be the cause here, and those are external factors. Factors like, did students miss one or more classes for some reason, like a sporting event or an activity or an in-service day? Some sort of factor that meant that maybe one of your classes missed more lessons than another class and you had to try to push it all together. Another thing would be some sort of factor that's impacting your students but is based outside of your school. Maybe there's a local business that just closed and a lot of your students' families lost jobs, or maybe there's some sort of a pandemic happening, or maybe some sort of gang violence or other sort of societal problem that is suddenly impacting your students in a significant way, but that really is completely out of your control. Another external factor we have to consider is deadlines. Were you rushing to try and maybe get the content in before a big holiday break? Or was there some sort of external deadline imposed by a standardized test or a department head or a colleague that you felt like you had to push to meet? Those kind of factors can really impact our students. One extra day might make a big difference between a lot of students failing and students doing really well. And we want to try to balance the needs of those deadlines with the needs of our students. So now comes the most important part, which is what to do next. So this has happened. Where do we go from here? Now, the first part of this is what your students will probably be most concerned about, but we as teachers should probably consider this a secondary concern, which is what to do with this grade. Now, we have options like keep the grade, curve the grade, toss the grade in the garbage, or maybe organize some sort of a retest. All of these options have their own valid applications. Personally, I'm more a fan of either keeping the grade or tossing the grade. I'm not a big fan of curving grades. I think it kind of sends a dangerous message that when a lot of students don't do well, it's okay because we'll just give everybody more free points. I like to make sure that my students feel like they have to earn all the points that they receive. But you have to really examine some of the factors we're going to talk about next as far as how important the topic is and what the outlook is going forward to determine which of these options is the best one for you and your students, and make sure that it aligns with the policies of your school and your classroom. So now we come to the part of this that we should be most concerned about as teachers, which is what to do next from our perspective. Now we want to think about, first and foremost, how important is this topic in the scheme of our course, in the scheme of the multi-year progression that your students are heading down. And while we all would like to think that every one of the topics we teach is very important, the reality is that there are definitely some topics that are really critical, that are going to come up again in a week, in a month, in a year, and some that maybe aren't. So considering those factors is really important. I want to mention at this point, it's very important. Don't be too hard on yourself or your students. Whatever factors led to this happening, everyone's working hard, everyone's trying their best, and it's important to be gentle and kind to yourself, gentle and kind to our students, and focus more on our next steps, more on what we can do to alleviate this problem in the future than it is to look back and assign blame to ourselves or our students. Now, an advanced tip that you can try, particularly with maybe a little bit older students, is when the students come back and you've realized that they haven't done well, maybe facilitate a little bit of a group discussion or a little bit of a group writing assignment, right? Let's have our students reflect on why they think they didn't do well, why they think the class didn't do well. You might be amazed how insightful your students can be, and they may highlight some areas that were struggles for them that you may not have even realized or not have noticed, and may really help you to identify and get to the bottom of what really caused these struggles. So now that we've examined the factors and we've talked about what to do next, now it's time to formulate and implement a plan. So if you feel like you need to reteach, it's important to consider, is there another way or another approach to teach this lesson? You may want to reach out to a colleague, a department head, a mentor, and ask them, is there some other different way that I could teach this lesson, some way that I could approach it in a new way so that my students can kind of see it from a different angle and maybe finally light that light bulb. If you have some tips for how you've retaught a lesson and had success, please share them in the comments so we can all learn together. The next question is, do you need to reteach right now, or could it maybe wait for some time down the line? I always found that reteaching lessons worked well for me when I had a little bit of a gap between when I originally taught it and when I taught it again. That time seemed to work wonders in just letting the students kind of refresh their minds and see it again from a new angle. And I would like to put those days sometimes like right before a holiday or in one of those weird weeks where there's a couple days off in the middle or something where, we're already kind of discombobulated and now we can just focus on this one thing for 1 or 2 days and kind of just dive into it and fix whatever was our problem the first time. And then you might want to even consider not all lessons need to be retaught. Some topics are really crucial and some aren't as crucial. And so think about how this topic fits into the big picture and how some topics maybe aren't quite as critical. As a pre-calc teacher, if my students maybe didn't understand matrices as well, I don't know when they're going to see matrices again down the road. And so even though they didn't master it this time, the experience of seeing it will hopefully pay off if they do encounter it down the road by having at least been exposed once already. Most important is don't be shy, don't hide, don't be embarrassed. This happens to all of us, and teaching is a growth profession. It's about growing and improving all the time. Just like our students have to grow and improve, we have to grow and improve. So this can happen to the best of teachers, and the worst thing you can do is be embarrassed and just hide from it. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your leaders, talk to your mentors, and grow through this, improve. And if you have some great tips, please share them with us in the comments. I'll be happy to get back to you if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.